Some power hides behind uniforms, some behind silence. On a hushed Georgia byway, two deputies stopped a lone black woman, assuming quiet compliance. She looked ordinary, steady voice, no insignia on display. But Raina Clarke wasn't just any driver. She ran the Drug Enforcement Administration. They slipped dope into her trunk, chuckled while cuffing her, then hauled her on fabricated charges. Another routine setup, they thought. Within hours, smirks would fade, because detaining Raina, DEA director, didn't just clock as a mistake, it pried open a machine that had shielded them for years. Before we push on, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you shouldn't miss. Dawn felt suspended, breath held tight. A thin fog floated over Pine, veiling the ribboned highway as Raina guided a silver sedan. Her window cracked just enough to let damp pine and fresh asphalt thread the cabin's air. Last night's rain still lacquered the road, gleaming beneath a reluctant gray light. She wasn't dressed to stand out. Charcoal hoodie, dark jeans, hair knotted low, no credential flashing. Her phone sat silent beside cooling coffee, untouched since leaving her sister's driveway before sunrise. The visit had been overdue, 3 days away from Washington's churn, wrapped in family chatter, homework at the kitchen table, midnight laughter over cards and homemade peach cobbler, not bakery sweetness. For a while, the title she carried in D.C. went weightless. That was the point. Here, she wasn't a public name or federal letterhead, just Aunt Raina, present and patient, folding towels and shuffling to old music in socks that slid across polished floors. The road unspooled ahead, empty and unhurried. Dashboard. No missed calls, no alerts, just the slow taper of a weekend. Her fingers tapped the wheel in time with a low soul groove. Marvin Gaye breathed softly, a steady anchor more than a distraction. Then she saw it, a cruiser's grill catching light in her rear view, too close, too deliberate to be nothing. She expected it to pass, just another unit circling a sleepy county. It didn't. It matched her pace, presence deliberate, like eyes behind tinted glass. She bled a little speed, 43 in a 45. Smooth lanes, no drift. She signaled toward the shoulder to invite a pass. The cruiser stayed put. Lights finally blinked, unhurried and sure of themselves. No siren, just blue-red authority murmuring a message. Pull over now. She eased onto gravel, turn signal ticking dutifully. Engine hushed, hands went to the wheel, posture straight, eyes forward. Not her first stop, not her first dance with power that asked questions first and apologized, maybe later. Still, a small tightness gathered under her ribs. Two figures approached, one at her window, one lingering behind the trunk, angled to cover blind spots. The one at the glass, square jaw, sun-creased skin, rapped twice with two knuckles. Not impatient exactly, but with entitlement that assumed instant obedience without needing to announce itself. She lowered the window halfway. Expression even, tone measured. "Morning, officer. What's the reason for the stop?" He didn't answer immediately. Eyes traveled from her face to her hands on the wheel. "License and registration," he said, dry voice, politeness masking a practiced edge. "Routine patrol." "You drifted a bit." "Didn't feel any drift," she said. "I'll get you what you need." Movements slow and plain. Glove box open, paperwork neat, wallet retrieved carefully. It was choreography she knew by heart. Care as survival, precision as insurance against escalation and becoming someone's bad story. She handed over documents. The second deputy, broad-shouldered, a mean tilt in posture, edged closer, eyes combing the cabin. The older deputy studied her license longer than necessary, brow pinched. "Address," he muttered, almost to himself. "Visiting family?" "Yes," she said steady. He flicked a glance rearward, then said, "Pop the trunk." Raina did not move. "Is that a request or a lawful order?" Her voice stayed calm, firmer now. The younger deputy's hand drifted toward his baton, other hand easing near his holster. "Got something back there we should worry about?" "I know what's in my trunk," she replied evenly. And I'd like to understand your basis for searching it. The older deputy's tone cooled. No need to argue, ma'am. You can comply, or we do it hard. Seconds lengthened. She pressed the dash release. The trunk rose with a soft thunk. The younger vanished from view, boots scuffing gravel. She stared forward. The older deputy lingered at her window, unreadable. Silence stretched. Then the younger returned, pinching a small clear baggie between two fingers, pale powder inside. Well, now, he said, lifting it into sight, guess you forgot to store this properly. Raina didn't blink. That wasn't in my trunk. You sure? I'm sure. The older deputy leaned nearer, breath stale. Lady, you're not in D.C. here. Keep playing clever. We'll make this real uncomfortable. I know my rights, Raina said, voice unwavering. I don't consent to this search. I want counsel. You're presenting planted evidence. His brow lifted. A corner smile twitched, half amusement, half contempt. Hear that, Crowley? He called to his partner. Got ourselves a law professor. Crowley's laugh was short and joyless, tension seeping through. Guilty folks talk a lot. I'm not guilty, Raina replied, gaze steady, tone refusing to rise. Hewick, if you believed your arrest would stand, you wouldn't need mockery to prop misconduct. The older deputy closed distance, presence heavy. That tone, he muttered, jaw tight, scanning her up and down. Keep it. We'll add obstruction. Badges mean directions get followed. Raina didn't flinch, hands visible, shoulders quiet, breath controlled. Then follow the law and call a supervisor, she said. Any further step without one violates your own policy. The moment went brittle. He stepped back, resolve sharpening. Not justice, resentment. Step out of the car, he said, voice tighter now. No, she answered, even firmer. Not without a supervisor present. You have no basis to arrest me, no grounds to search me, and that bag wasn't in my vehicle. Performance ended. He reached inside, popped the lock, yanked the door, and seized her arm. Crowley swooped in, unlatched her belt, dragging her out with practiced coordination, bruising choreography, choreographed by repetition. Miranda never came. Charges weren't explained. Evidence wasn't logged. They hauled her like someone needing correction, not process. Pavement thudded under her shoes as they muscled her to the rear. Cuffs clicked harsh, cinched tighter than necessary, not for safety, but to sting. She refused panic, spine long, chin lifted. This is unlawful, she said, voice flat with precision. I've complied, presented no threat. The evidence you display was not present minutes ago. I demand badge numbers and your supervisor's name. No answers, just movement, deliberate, indifferent. Passing drivers stared, seeing only a routine arrest, trusting uniforms over context, silence over truth. Anonymity cut both ways. Cruel liberty for them, dangerous for her. Crowley opened the cruiser's rear door, gestured low. She ducked, slid onto molded plastic, cuffs biting. The door shut without echo, final as a lid. Through glass, she watched them take the front seats, settling like nothing unusual had happened. The older deputy thumbed his radio, cadence casual. Unit 62, 1015, one female, possession, resisting search. Every word false, no name logged, powder untested, no resistance offered. But now a record existed. Fiction often becomes evidence in systems that rarely interrogate scripts, especially when the person cuffed looks like her. The ride was quiet. Static bursts, tires humming over rain-dark asphalt. Raina sat still, not pleading, not bargaining. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was accuracy. She took inventory. Dash sticker peeling, a cigarette burn on Crowley's sleeve, route bends, timestamps, encoding details like a deposition living behind her eyes. By the time the cruiser turned behind the station, she'd filed mental notes, their names, unit number, the unannounced escalation. The older deputy opened her door, his grip less mocking now, just hard. They guided her through a side entrance into a dim hallway with flickering lights and scuffed tile floors. Air smelled of old coffee and floor cleaner. A rattling fan buzzed behind bars near booking. The desk sergeant looked up, reached for a clipboard without curiosity. Possession and obstruction, the older deputy said, passing the cuffs chain. The sergeant reached for her ID with minimal interest, moving as if on autopilot. Name, Raina Clarke. He typed one-handed, eyes on her, matching a measured voice to the woman before him. Keys clacked slowly, casual. Another line item. He glanced at the screen. Neutral face, then blinked. Posture shifted. Small, precise changes Raina registered. He typed faster. Another query. Something changed on his monitor. The display flickered, loaded a different border, a deeper clearance. His face drained from indifference. Hold on, he muttered, to himself more than to anyone else. He stepped back slightly, looked at her again, really looked. Clothes, posture, the calm silence that felt more like assessment than fear, restraint without capitulation. You said Clarke? Yes. He looked back at the screen, hand hovering over keys, then moved to the phone. What's the issue? The older deputy asked, irritation returning as silence stretched. The sergeant didn't answer. He dialed an internal line, murmuring into the receiver, eyes pinned to the screen's newly revealed details. Raina, still cuffed, stood motionless. No shifting, no unnecessary words. She watched confusion curdle into dread. The call ended. He gestured down a hallway. Both of you, conference room now. The deputies exchanged a look. Crowley had re-entered expecting an easy handoff, maybe compliments. Urgency knocked that presumption sideways hard. What's going on? Crowley asked. Do it! The sergeant snapped, sharper. They hesitated, then obeyed. Raina tracked their gait, tight shoulders, eyes flashing back. The door closed behind them. The sergeant returned and carefully unlocked her cuffs, hands shaking. Ma'am, I need your phone. She handed it over without resistance. Logging as personal property, he said. It'll be returned. I need a call, she answered. He nodded, typed again, entering her name into a federal database. The system pinged, a sharp audio cue uncommon in local workflows. The screen flashed red, then resolved into an official portrait, federal grade and unmistakable. Not a DMV headshot, an official photo. Below, Clarke, Raina Director, Drug Enforcement Administration, Classified Access Level 5, Immediate Federal Contact Required. The sergeant's mouth parted. He looked up at her again, unease colliding with procedure. Ma'am, he said slowly, syllables catching, we didn't know. I'll need a secure line, she replied. And you'll do more. Lock this building down. Freeze internal access. Seal surveillance. Lock every badge. Secure the chain of custody desk. This precinct is under federal hold. She didn't wait for permission. She moved to a secured terminal, keyed override codes from memory. The room fell quiet, authority replacing presumption. Moments later, Agent Daniel Salgado's voice crackled through. Director Clarke, I've been detained under false pretenses by 2 deputies in Pine Hollow County, initiating lockdown, requesting immediate team for physical security, data extraction, and chain of evidence audit. A pause. Are you safe? Uninjured. The deputies who arrested me are gone. Say again? They bolted the moment my identity hit the system. They were gone before the ping finished. Not an accident. The planted drugs came in evidence-grade seals. I believe they were pulled from a federal seizure. Understood. Extraction team inbound, 40 minutes. Hold position. She ended the call. She turned to the sergeant. Monitor every exit. Check cruisers logged for the last 3 hours. Pull the last 15 minutes of internal video and back it up externally, unaltered. The sergeant nodded, then paused. Their cruiser. It's not out front. Then where? I don't know. Find out immediately, she ordered. Search all lots. They didn't leave on foot. The vehicle either swapped plates or got ditched. Issue an alert under DEA jurisdiction and flag the cruiser as missing internally. He grabbed the radio. His voice shook, but moved with urgency. Somewhere in the building, An emergency chirp sounded briefly, sharp and undeniable. Across the county, systems flagged the precinct under federal restriction. Nearby units would converge, not to shield, but to question. Files would be pried from drawers. Once shut tight, routine would fracture. Raina stood at the desk's edge. No cuffs now, no anonymity. Authority undeniable. Ignorance had evaporated. They hadn't known who she was when they lit her up on that back road. They knew now. And whoever helped those men vanish, whoever signed off on the baggies, whoever ran the script behind closed doors, would learn the lesson the hardest way. Clearing her name wasn't the mission's endpoint. She intended to dismantle theirs. The evidence room ran cold, by thermostat and by atmosphere. The property clerk, 60s, half-moon readers, faded polo with county insignia, hovered near a steel rack. A cocaine sample sat freshly logged and sealed. Agent Salgado took the clipboard, face unreadable, then passed it over. The bag's tag number didn't match local booking systems. No corresponding report, no inventory code from their clerk. Instead, a federal trace string tied to Operation Halberd, a multi-agency sting seizing 400 plus kilos 2 months prior in Miami. That shipment had been airlifted to a secure Virginia lockup. There, it was supposed to sit under strict surveillance. Raina scanned the form. The code looked legitimate. The test kit stapled to the pouch was authentic. Yet it surfaced in her trunk along a Georgia back road, in hands of 2 county deputies with zero clearance, evidence of a deeper breach. Someone had punctured federal inventory and slipped product back onto streets, not as contraband, but as bait. Her expression didn't change. This never entered their custody, she said quietly. It never should have left ours. Someone bypassed 2 layers of clearance and relabeled logs to hide the extraction. No one pulls that off alone. Salgado nodded. They had access. They had time. They counted on no one important getting stopped with it. She returned the clipboard to the clerk. This entire facility is now a federal crime scene. Lock every room, secure every cabinet. I want a manifest of everything booked for 30 days. If anything's missing, I want to know what, when, and by whom. The technician swallowed, nodded, quietly called his team. Outside storage, tension spread like oil under a closed door. Officers who mocked minutes earlier now stood straight, watching hallways from the corners of their eyes, speaking less, clinging harder to phones. No siren blared overhead, but truth had arrived. Internal Affairs walked in under Captain Naomi Keir, tailored gray suit, 2 analysts, and a DOJ civil rights liaison. Known for saying little, understanding much, she moved without wasting courtesy. Her team seized logs, isolated terminals, and began asking questions that tightened throats. Keir didn't waste minutes. Her analysts vacuumed hard drives, mirrored body cam repositories, and isolated dispatch consoles. A deputy tried to unplug a terminal. She stopped him with a look. Jurisdiction shifted in a breath. This house now answered upward, not sideways. The county chief arrived. Walter Creel, long face, thinning hair disciplined into authority. He offered concern the way people offer umbrellas in storms they helped create. Director Clarke, he said, hand extended. She didn't take it. Keir kept moving, letting silence measure him. Creel tried again. This is a misunderstanding. Hale and Crowley are solid men. We run a tight ship. Raina watched his eyes keep searching for exits inside his own sentence. Tight ships don't leak federal evidence bags onto back roads in morning fog. You're telling me you didn't know 2 deputies accessed cartel-grade product from a federal locker, used it to fabricate an arrest, then fled before anybody learned my name? Creel's mouth opened without sound. Salgado stepped beside her, file in hand, timing like a drumbeat. Their stops show a pattern, Salgado said. Mostly Black and Latino drivers, small jurisdictions, body cam footage frequently unavailable. Complaints went nowhere. Creel rubbed his neck. We've been short-staffed, he murmured. Protocols slip. Raina stepped forward without heat. Only clarity sharpened to a point. What's slipping isn't protocol. It's trust, she said. If you didn't know, they were smarter than you. Or you were too comfortable to notice. I need to know which. Before he could answer, Salgado's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, listened, and came back changed. He angled the screen so Raina could see. A convenience store camera, still, grainy, time-stamped. Hale and Crowley exiting a cruiser, sliding into a black SUV's back seat. Plates already traced. Registered to Marcus Vale. Raina felt the name drop into old memory. That ring familiar? Salgado asked. It should, she said, voice falling half a note. Vole was a narcotics officer out of Arizona, officially died in a car fire years ago. Salgado's mouth tightened. Apparently not. He's the one who collected them. Raina studied the image, then lifted her gaze toward Keir, who was finishing the first sweep of C's terminals. I want everything on Vale. If he faked death, he didn't do it alone. If he's back, this isn't two men, it's infrastructure. Keir nodded once. Salgado folded his arms. They knew where that product came from, he said. They knew how to make it disappear. Raina answered, Then we follow not just them, but the silence around them. The precinct's center of gravity shifted another inch. Morning hardened toward noon. In the secured conference room, a wall screen glowed with a regional map. Red pins marked every Hale Crowley stop across 14 months. There were too many. Charged outcomes clustered like bruises. Not random, not luck. A practiced hunt dressed in paperwork. Agent Julia Kane, tech lead, hair pinned, words clipped, worked the remote. Each pin pulsed with metadata. Time, location, name, charge, outcome. Patterns surfaced like oil. They favor peripheries, Kane said softly. Lanes where dash cams go quiet. Accusations write themselves, and oversight looks elsewhere. Raina tapped a pulsing pin near the top left quadrant, blinking a different shade. What's this? Kane opened the case. Jordan LEMAR, 23. Stop. Failure to signal. Dead 2 hours after booking. Ruled suicide. Temperature in the room seemed to drop a measurable degree. Bring everything, Raina said. The files spilled across the table. Intake forms, a spare report, a sterile autopsy summary. No prior record. A call to his mother from holding, scared but coherent. 90 minutes later, he was found hanging. No psych eval, no suicide watch order. No supervisory sign-off on intake, Salgado noted. Keir's face scarcely moved. Medical examiner lists ligature marks, but no restraint injuries, she said. Contradiction number 1. Kane hesitated. There's something else. She turned her laptop and opened a folder labeled LEMAR, bystander scrape. Shaky phone video, parked across the street, uploaded to a neighborhood page, never entered as evidence. The arrest played clear enough. Hale dragged Jordan by the collar, hands visible, no fight. Crowley pressed a knee, shoved him into the cruiser with the indifference of habit. Raina replayed the clip twice. How was this missed? Kane shook her head. Wasn't. Buried. The account got flagged for unrelated posts and deleted 3 weeks later. Community rights group scraped it in a routine sweep. Otherwise gone. Keir exhaled. They counted on nobody stitching pieces together. They didn't expect anyone to compare notes, Salgado said. Reports crafted just clean enough to slide past eyes that are tired or complicit. Raina looked at the names on the wall. This isn't misconduct, she said. It's structure. They weren't policing. They were hunting. Kane opened another overlay. Cluster of cases, same phrasing, same deputies, where seized narcotics were collected but never logged. In one, a kilo of unmarked powder appears in the narrative, nowhere in property inventory. Salgado rose. If it vanished, it got resold or replanted. Track every gram. Raina nodded. Double verify everything Hale or Crowley touched for a year. Every bag number, every chain of custody. Salgado was already dialing. Raina turned to Keir. We reopen LEMAR. File with DOJ civil rights. Exhume if needed. Subpoena every signer of that suicide claim. Keir didn't blink. I'll file them myself. They moved fast without panic. They weren't building a single case. They were erecting scaffolding, sturdy enough to hold a larger truth. The pattern wasn't an accident. It was design, reinforced by silence, paperwork, and vanished footage. 2 days later, a secure DOJ line fed a message into Keir's encrypted inbox, unsigned, voice filtered, and tight with fear. They've done 5 departments in 10 years. Transfers coincide with major seizures. Product goes missing, gets mislogged, or reappears on streets. If you're serious, check 4 jurisdictions: Pine Ridge, Jefferson Parish, Marlow County, Lorton Heights. The voice hurried. Same pattern, same cleanup, same missing inventory. Don't ask for my name. If they learn I talked, I'm next. The clip ended mid-breath. Keir replayed it twice, then went to work on transfer logs. Within 30 minutes, she'd confirmed Hale and Crowley moved 5 times since 2013. Each arrival trailed a cartel seizure by weeks. Each time, evidence got compromised or reclassified into fog. She built a timeline as merciless as it was neat, dates stapled to outcomes with wire. Marlow County, 2016, raid netted nearly 2 million unmarked cash and 73 pounds of uncut heroin. Weeks later, cash rerouted to a DEA office, marked lost in transit. No charges. Crowley's surname misspelled in the arrest roster, conveniently abbreviated like a paper cut hiding a wound. Pine Ridge, 2019. Cartel-linked fentanyl, listed as 6 bricks at seizure, reduced to 2 upon evidence intake. No review. Hale had transferred a month prior, assigned to a temporary fusion task force, whose roster was later scrubbed. Keir sent the full packet to Raina with one-line commentary. It wasn't only pattern, it was playbook. At sundown, the digital case board sprawled across the conference wall, departments by year, assignments by timestamp, transfers in red arrows, task forces grayed out like ghosts. The abstract web hardened into logistics, intentional, portable, far from isolated. Kane entered with fresh audits. Your hunch about manipulations was right, she said, voice low. Dozens of seizure records were edited post-log. Many share the same fingerprint, a backdoor access key tied to a level 3 DEA override credential. Raina's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Those codes live behind encryption and go only to senior agents, she said. Who had access? Kane's mouth tightened. That's the rot. The credential belongs to a DEA staffer who died 6 years ago. The profile was retired, then revived last year through an administrative reset. Raina stared at the network diagram. And no one flagged revival of a dead agent's credentials? No, Kane answered, expanding an architecture pane. Because the actions flowed through an internal auditing tool meant for emergency corrections, updating sealed data during legal transfers. That tool's name is Zeno. The room stilled. Keir looked up. I've heard it, old infrastructure, pre-cloud. Kane nodded. A decade-old layer for cross-agency evidence reconciliation. Never decommissioned, just buried under nested protocols. It runs semi-autonomously, unless interrupted. Someone's been using it to rewrite, reassign, erase. So they moved product with digital authorization, Raina said, finishing the thought. Ghost approvals, stamped by a dead man's hand. Kane nodded again. We wouldn't have tripped it if your ID hadn't touched their booking software. The alert lag, 90 seconds, means someone was watching the gate. Keir folded her arms. Which implies an insider still active, someone who didn't just learn the system, but helped build its pathways. Salgado swept in with a stack of dusty files. Pulled your old Lorton Heights task force records, he said, laying them open to a familiar operation name. Operation Holdfast, Joint Venture, DEA, Local Enforcement, Border our Patrol, 2015 seizure, summarized dryly, Hale and Crowley listed as tactical advisors for rural surveillance, officially disbanded a year later amid corruption whispers, senior supervisors retired early. The deputies' names never surfaced. They simply transferred like shadows relocating. Raina flipped a final page. A systems liaison appeared. Agent Marcus Vale, the dead man from Arizona, embedded during Holdfast. The same figure on the convenience store capture, collecting Hale and Crowley. The circle wasn't snug, it was seamless. Old programs don't die, they repurpose. They built this network from something we buried, Raina said, and kept it alive with a system we forgot. Kier exhaled. Then we do what no one did. We drag it into daylight. The board's header pulsed one word, less tool than mask. Zeno. The man who agreed to talk came quietly. False name at the door. 2 checkpoints, no digital trail. He asked for Raina and Kier only, no recordings, no transcripts. He looked older than his 59 years, eroded by choices and consequences that outlived uniforms. He introduced himself as William Fry, retired sergeant, former federal task force hand out of El Paso during the Southern Cartel surge. Career ended in 2015. Medical discharge, non-disclosure lacquered across his file. He sat like someone who'd paid in silence and wasn't sure it bought anything. His opening line wasn't denial, it was grief. "You're looking for the wrong thing," he said. "You think it's a bad precinct or dirty unit. What you're seeing is a remnant, what survived when a program was buried, names rotated, purposes untouched." Kier leaned in, arms folded. "What program?" Fry placed a thin folder on the table. Field reports stripped of insignia, yellowed, margins scribbled with notes. "Operation Spire," he said, later rebranded Holdfast. It was a joint task force with black budget blood running in the pipes. "We didn't make arrests," Fry continued. "We cleaned them. When raids tangled, when evidence didn't fit, when seizures outgrew paperwork, we corrected narratives. Sometimes we rerouted product to false inventories. Sometimes suspects moved to private transport. Sometimes footage simply stopped existing." Raina didn't blink. "You were reputation control," she said. Fry gave a small, humorless laugh. "We preserved the appearance of success." Kier's tone sharpened. "How did that become product back on streets?" Fry's smile vanished. "Offers came, never direct. If crates vanished without questions, someone profited." The line blurred, he said. Covering mistakes became covering theft. Then theft became the point. Raina kept eyes on him. "Hale and Crowley?" "Late additions," Fry said. "Recruited on the last wave before Spire's burial. When Holdfast dissolved, they didn't stop. They went underground. They used what they learned. How to scrub, exploit audits, and move product under color of authority." Raina shared a look with Kier. "Were they alone?" Fry shook his head. "No. You need clearance, access, and someone to wipe ledgers when errors surface. That's where Zeno came in," he said. The word hit like a weight. Kier's voice flattened. "Is Zeno a person or a system?" Fry exhaled. "Both. Originally a task signature, clearance layer buried in the evidence chain for intelligence holds. Over time, somebody wore it like a mask. They wrote scripts using the Zeno alias to override logs, rewrite timestamps, issue orders," Fry said. "No one questioned it because it looked like federal clearance. Zeno became a myth. If something disappeared, we'd say Zeno took it. Sarcasm at first, eventually literal." Raina's stare didn't waver. "So a placeholder meant for classified holds became a laundering channel." "Exactly," Fry said. "And whoever ran it got excellent. Too excellent." He slid a note across the table, names half redacted, dates intact, like a confession built from breadcrumbs and sleepless nights. The note mapped Zeno touches across years, emergency edits after messy raids, inventory corrections, flanking transfers, footage downtimes that synced too neatly with controversial bookings. Kier marked each line, already building warrants in her head, already seeing doors opening to rooms long dark. "Who architected Zeno?" Raina asked. Fry hesitated. "Officially? Nobody. Practically? A rotating set of senior tech liaisons who loved kludges and hated sunlight. The credential you tripped belonged to a man we buried with honors. Someone resurrected his ghost for convenience." Kane stepped in with a tablet. "We found more. Zeno calls, ride an internal bus that hops enclaves and scrubs headers. It routes through a forgotten audit server in Richmond, powered, patched, supposedly decommissioned. Raina nodded once. Subpoena the host. Quietly. Mirror the disks before the rumor travels. Kier's phone vibrated. She listened, jaw tightening. Hale and Crowley's cruiser turned up behind an abandoned orchard, plates swapped, panels stripped for dashcam cards. Raina didn't curse. She memorized. Canvas for surveillance near there, public and private. They ditched hardware because someone meets with promises. Vale, Salgado said from the doorway, voice edged. We pinged his former partner off the record. The fire that killed him left gaps. Dental records matched a John Doe later exhumed for another case. Mix up conveniently unresolved. Vale's pension profile shows anomalous access pings posthumously. Raina absorbed the chain. He ghosted himself, she said, with help. He didn't just survive, he graduated into logistics. Kier started drafting sealed affidavits. Kane's fingers flew. Salgado was already walking a parallel line to a judge who understood why some doors require midnight. By afternoon, the precinct buzzed like a hive with a new queen. Officers kept heads down. Some watched, calculating. Some avoided eye contact, already negotiating with futures they hadn't planned. The hallway bulletin boards were suddenly archives. Every memo felt like a potential exhibit. Raina stepped into evidence again. The clerk had pulled 30 days of manifests. 2 entries were wrong in ways that felt intentional, typos too consistent, timestamps displaced by identical minutes. Slips like those don't happen twice unless a template's involved or a script impersonates people. She circled the anomalies and slid them to Kane. Look for repeated offset patterns, Raina said. Bot fingerprints masquerading as human error. Kane nodded, already parsing. A minute later, she looked up, found a cadence, 7-minute skews on edits touching contested seizures. That cadence repeats across jurisdictions, tagged to Hale and Crowley, Kane added, and to 3 other names embedded in their orbit. Raina's mouth went flat. So our duo is actually a cluster. Kier, task it, build a tree, find the human at the root of Zeno's mask. Salgado returned from a call. We've got a federal extraction team on Vale's family plot. The grave marker bearing his name was disturbed years ago. Paperwork shows cremation. The vault shows nothing. He never lay there. Raina let the confirmation settle like a cold truth. He's alive, mobile, and loyal to revenue, not oath, she said, and he just rescued his collectors. Kier's eyes flinted. Then we cut the purse strings. Kane chimed in. Richmond audit server is online. I can mirror with a stealth job, but we need physical warrants fast. You'll have them, Kier said. Raina paced once, then stopped. When we move, they'll burn. So we move on 2 fronts, legal and quiet. Pull backups, seize terminals, and freeze network routes, and we prepare for the oldest trick, pulling local goodwill to jam the gears. Creel hovered in the doorway, gathering himself. Director Clarke, my people, she cut him off. Your people will cooperate, or they'll discover how quickly badges lose magnetism when federal obstruction attaches. He swallowed, nodding, torn between habit and reality. He chose self-preservation, however reluctantly. The next morning began under fluorescents that hummed like they held secrets. The conference table brimmed with printouts, logs, and a rolling map, updated live by Kane. Red pins pulsed, a quieter layer. Blue threads showed Zeno's editing path, ghosting through machines that should have been retired. We've correlated Zeno calls with shift MA, Kane said. They prefer late nights, holiday weekends, and power outages. They use a time drift trick to dodge SIAM alarms. Raina traced a thread. Enough, she said. We move on Richmond. Kier, execute, Salgado, prep a parallel knock. Kier's team rolled with sealed orders. Salgado briefed the entry crew like a teacher diagramming a sentence, every clause precise, every comma purposeful. Raina called headquarters, not asking for permission, but for coverage. The answer came back crisp. proceed, and bring sunlight where people forgot it existed. At noon, an image hit Kane's screen, a side lot camera outside a storage facility, suburbs north of town. The black SUV again. Vale stepped out with two men partially masked, height profiles matching Hale and Crowley. A third figure waited, posture practiced, face never turning. Who's the third? Salgado asked. Kane paused the frame. Movement suggests someone trained. Watch the scanning pattern. Corners, then reflections. Raina leaned closer. That's not a deputy's swagger. That's a handler. They ran plates, cross-referenced utility pings, and found a unit leased under a shell company. The shell traced to a consulting outfit contracting on evidence management modernization for several counties, including Pine Hollow. Keir's eyebrows lifted a millimeter. They built the door and kept a key. Raina nodded once. Issue holds on payments. Pull contracts. We follow the money until it talks. While Richmond warrants executed, officers in Pine Hollow watched federal teams move like clockwork. No shouting, no theater, only competence. Rumors boiled. Someone whispered witch hunt. Someone else whispered about time. Raina ignored both, staying with verifiable things: logs, dates, signatures, and the human tells between them. Late afternoon, Kane's mirrored drives began indexing. Zeno's logs weren't elegant. They were effective. Comment lines like dry jokes, variable names like misdirection. But intent bled through. Reroutes approved under emergency tags. Outbound packets pointed at counties where Hale and Crowley once smiled in lineup photos. Keir skimmed and whistled softly, a sound she rarely made. This will hold in court. Salgado looked up. And on television, he said flatly. Raina didn't smile. We're not chasing headlines. We're restoring gravity. Still, she knew. Sunlight deters. Shame sometimes does what policy won't. One more thing, Kane said. The dead agent's credential wasn't the only ghost. Another ID was revived. Shorter window, different domain, used to approve a disposal that never occurred. Guess which operation? Hold fast. Raina's jaw set. Then Zeno isn't alone. It's a choir wearing borrowed names. Keir turned to Fry. Who wrote Zeno's first scripts? Fry stared at the tabletop. A systems liaison who hated bureaucracy more than crime. He thought shortcuts made heroes. He recruited true believers, then opportunists. When accountability knocked, he vanished into his own back door. Raina pushed the folder back to him. We'll need your statement on record. Fry nodded, afraid and relieved. I'll speak, he said, but understand, someone will try to close my mouth. Raina's voice carried steel. Then they'll learn our doors now lock both ways. She looked at the map, at names, at the thin seams connecting years of vanished accountability. So a placeholder for classified holds became a laundering pipeline, she said. Fry met her eyes. Exactly, he answered. And they got good at it. He paused. Too good. At some point, Fry murmured, older eyes gone distant, even the cartels realized letting those units push product was safer. Less blood, less noise, faster shipments. Who ran it? Naomi Keir asked. Fry stared at his hands. No one, he finally said. Or everyone. That's the design. It was never a single throne. Once the gate was propped open, it stayed a door, he added. Anyone with the right key could step through. Raina Clarke rose, paced once, returned to the table. You're giving us your archive. I'm giving you a shot at ending what should have died years ago, Fry said. But understand, this isn't superstition. It's a mechanism. And it runs on quiet, he said. People who got close vanished or were branded unstable. Last agent who complained about a forged Zeno signature, institutionalized in 8 weeks. No hearings, no appeal, just erased. Naomi didn't answer, but Raina saw the storm gathering behind her composed face. Fry stood, reached for his coat. I'll disappear after this, and I don't want protection. I've carried this weight long enough. If you want to stop them, don't just cuff the men. Kill the system. He left without another word. Silence held a beat before Naomi turned back. You trust him? I trust that the pieces interlock, Raina said. That's enough. Agent Daniel Salgado stepped into the doorway with new intel. We traced an outgoing ping to a known burner tied to Hale. It hopped through Louisiana, crossed a border network, and lit in Mexico, but Chatter says he's back stateside, rebuilding a route. Then we find them before the next drop, Raina said, voice steady. No more chasing their wake. We treat each mislogged bag, each phantom shipment, as an active threat. We use their playbook against them. Naomi nodded once. Salgado hesitated. There's more. I contacted an analyst forced out years ago, flagged Zeno early. She avoided whistleblower channels, said the process couldn't be trusted, he continued. She's stayed quiet since, but she'll meet you. Off the record, only you. Raina studied him, then nodded. Set it. 1 hour, neutral ground, no surveillance. Salgado's mouth tightened. She picked the spot. You'll want to hear this. The cafe barely announced itself. Sun-faded awning. A bell without hours. A door that opened reluctantly. Inside smelled of roast beans and cinnamon dust. Raina chose the back booth facing the entrance, relaxed posture masking attention sharpened like glass. Her coat rested beside her, folded but immediately reachable. She tracked every movement without seeming to, no sidearm. She didn't need one here. The woman who entered wore a gray wool jacket and a black backpack. No scan, no hesitation. Straight to the booth. She set a USB on the table, pressing it down with a fingertip. Kara Daxon, she said quietly. Former systems analyst, DEA Cyber, she continued, eyes level. Terminated 3 years ago. Official note said mishandling classified data. Real reason? I flagged something that scared corner offices. Raina nodded once. Zeno, Kara gave a worn half smile. You've got the name right. The rest, people keep guessing ghosts and cleanup scripts. It's bigger, Kara said. Zeno isn't a person or a file. It's an ecosystem, a backdoor surveillance lattice built after 9/11 for cross-agency data blending. It quietly mirrored, duplicated, archived across DEA, Customs, Select Intel arms. Full clearance by design because it wasn't supposed to act, only watch. Raina stayed silent. Kara's tone tightened. Somewhere, execution hooks were grafted in. Access tunnels that could overwrite logs, swap identities, retro-inject inventory movement. If a kilo was seized in Texas, Zeno could vanish the entry and resurrect it under a phoenix bust. Reality didn't change. Paperwork did. Paperwork is reality. Why didn't anyone flag it sooner? Raina asked. I did, Kara said flatly. That's why I was escorted out. She slid a slim, unmarked folder, laminated, string-tied, across the table, opening it toward Raina. 3 printed pages. One bore a familiar signature, Raina's own, caught like a thorn under clean light. I don't expect you to recall thousands of onboarding initials, Kara said, voice softer. New directors rarely do. Buried inside an electronic approval batch was a persistence order, legacy systems reactivated quietly. Zeno was on that list. Raina studied the page. Her initials, her authorization, dated her first official week. Kara didn't gloat. She looked tired. They've been writing your clearance nearly a year. Every staged arrest that vanished, every seizure rerouted, every witness who fell off the map, they hid behind your name. Raina felt no shame, only focus. They baited me, planted dope, and watched for the alarm, When nothing tripped fast, they knew the back door still breathed, she said. And when it finally pinged, they bolted because something woke up. Raina closed the folder carefully, fingertips resting on her own initials. I'm not here to defend a title, she said. I'm here to cut the root. Then you'll have to burn core, not branches, Kara replied. It's not hidden anymore. It's institutional, which means protected. Raina stood, slipping the folder and USB into her bag. Then we make protection impossible. She left with an even expression, carrying a new gravity. Doubt was gone. The organism was real. That night, after a hard debrief with Kier and Salgado, Raina walked into the underground garage beneath the federal building. Her badge opened the gate. The lot echoed under humming lights. She approached her sedan, eyes sweeping, key in hand. A subtle wrongness. Wiper angle off, hood settled fractionally high. She stopped short, circled slowly, checking mirrored reflections along polished concrete. There, an unfamiliar cord hiding behind the wheel well, tucked deep. She stepped back and called it in. Security swept the car in minutes. No explosives. Worse, a doctored GPS relay wired into the ignition module. With it, someone could trace her live, stall the engine remotely, or kill power amid transit. The text labeled it surveillance enhanced sabotage, not just listening, waiting to strike. The part that chilled wasn't hardware. It was the note taped behind the passenger visor, block letters on white paper. Go home, director, or someone else won't. Raina's jaw set, no flinch. She folded the slip, slid it into her jacket. She already knew who someone else meant. Within the hour, her niece's house sat under full federal protection. Rotating tactical, plainclothes in the neighborhood, comms rerouted through hardened encryption. Raina didn't call. She trusted the shield. By morning, investigation became pursuit. Using Daxon's decrypted trove and Kier's internal audits, Raina ordered a coordinated multi-state strike to sever the very veins Zeno used to travel anonymously. 4 cities lit on the board: Phoenix, Baton Rouge, Tampa, Bakersfield, past nexus points for ghost inventories and compromised fusions. No banners, no press. Precision. In Phoenix, an ostensibly burned DEA storage site still pulsed, rebranded as private logistics under a Delaware shell. Inside, agents found 6 crates with original seals, cases marked destroyed. Operators gone. No alarms, no fight. Fresh tire arcs on the rear dock. One desk drawer left open. Baton Rouge, a trailer yard believed to be a handoff point. The ground was bare, plates stripped, office units scorched from within. Under charred flooring, a heat-warped safe held untraceable federal case files, redacted, spliced, butchered from context. Among them, duplicate printouts of Jordan Lamar's arrest, 2 timestamps, 2 truths. Tampa, a safe flat linked to a retired asset with holdfast ties, emptied fast, bed warm, coffee in the sink. But a server behind a false wall remained, its contents partial comm logs, encrypted threads routed through Zeno aliases, including one marked Vale. Bakersfield, a figure matching Crowley boarded a crop duster. By the time a team hit the strip, the plane was gone, manifest blank. Each push produced answers that bred questions. Each near grip slipped. Witnesses recanted, phones died, cameras lost power. That evening, Salgado stood with Raina before the map network, photos, lines, names, ink still feeling thin. We're chasing smoke, he said. We're chasing the wind behind smoke, Raina answered. That's where flame lives. She didn't mention the visor note or the relay. Instead, she laid out phase 2. Zeno survives by staying moving. We force movement the other way. We make noise so big they must respond. Kier entered, face set. Then now, she said, handing over a red band file. Inside, a classified alert, one of theirs. Lucas Wren, comms analyst, had gone dark near Lorton Heights. Vehicle torched on a logging road. No struggle, no distress call. In the glove box, his ID halved and a slip of paper. The message changed. One more echo, and the system dies with him. Raina stared until the words burned behind her eyes. She folded the slip, pocketed it, looked at Kier and Salgado. They aren't merely shielding Zeno, they're weaponizing it. If they're hunting analysts, something larger sits on deck. We hit them, Kier said, voice low. Not when the next person disappears now. Raina nodded. We won't wait for a signature. We intercept the next shipment. We carve their route dry. Hours later, a kill zone took shape. Natural choke point between jagged rock and a narrow underpass, West Texas, quiet as glass. The convoy rolled, unaware. A rattlesnake hissed in dust as tires droned past. In the tail SUV, a gunman squinted through tint. Feels wrong, he muttered. Driver smirked. You spook every time we hit West Texas. Not spooked, the gunman said, tightening on a compact SMG. This isn't nerves, it's silence. 30 seconds later, the world ripped. The penultimate sedan's fronts shredded at once, spike chain blooming from sand like conjured metal. It fish-tailed. Engine screaming died sideways. The last SUV braked, but a rain of flashbangs from the ridge cracked senses to chalk. Go! Raina cut through comms. Teams, breach, flank! From both ridgelines, black-clad agents poured down ropes, boots thudding hardpan, muzzles flared as shooters from the lead truck spilled out, firing blind through dust. The formation held, staggered cover, angles tightening. Raina didn't remain back. She ran with the breech stack, rifle high, breath controlled, stepping into the storm. A gunman swung around the cargo truck, weapon high, eyes wide. Raina stitched a controlled burst center plate. He stumbled. She closed distance, smashed a forearm into his throat, ripped the weapon free, drove a knee into sternum. He hit hard, stayed down. "To right!" Keir called over comms. "On it," Salgado answered. Rear SUV door kicked wide. Two more tumbled out, one with a sawed-off, one with a steel baton. The baton swung. Raina slid aside, trapped the wrist, torqued, and used his momentum to spike him into the truck's edge. He sagged. The shotgun came up. Raina dropped to a knee, bulldozed his legs, clubbed him cold. Salgado posted near the third truck, voice clipped. "Left clear. Intercept drivers. Watch for runners." On cue, a driver bolted, pistol shaking. Raina sprinted, didn't shoot. She tackled near a sand drop, both rolling. Grit bit her tongue. His fist clipped her cheekbone. She tasted iron, blocked twice, hammered palm to nose. He screamed, hands flying to his face. She drove a knee into gut, pinned his forearm, zip-tied wrists behind his back. Calm returned on comms. "Director!" Keir called, urgent. "Visual on Hale and Crowley. East Ridge behind the wrecked SUV. They're flanking toward the dry wash." Raina's eyes narrowed. "They're slipping." She rose, grabbed her rifles, sprinted across broken sand. Salgado shadowed left, both weaving between stone as sporadic shots cracked behind. "They're trying to pull you off," Salgado warned. "Let them try," Raina said, not breaking stride. The wash cut sharply, a scar in earth where storms once ran. Hale and Crowley moved like practiced wolves, fast, pistols up. They spun at the ridge, surprised to see Raina charging. "Should have stayed behind glass," Hale snarled, leveling. Raina fired first, clean grazing shot that snapped his shoulder, pistol dropping. Crowley roared and lunged. She met him head on, slammed him into rock. A hammering hook caught her ribs. Breath punched out. She twisted, drove an elbow into throat. He wheezed, swung ugly, clipped her jaw. Stars sparked. Salgado crashed into Hale, dumping him into sand, knee to thigh, elbow to temple, forearm across windpipe. "Plant something now, cowards," he hissed. Hale spat blood. "You're late," Hale croaked. Raina ducked another hook, stomped Crowley's shin, then cracked a short headbutt across nose. He howled, blood sheeted. She rolled him, wrenched his arm high, slammed his face into grit. "Should have ended you the first time," Crowley rasped. "You'll rot instead," Raina said, tying him down. Salgado cinched Hale's wrists, hauled him upright. "Shadow's gone," he said. "Networks exposed." Hale laughed through pink teeth. "You don't even know what you're standing on." "We will," Raina answered, chest heaving. "Stone by stone, precinct by precinct, your scaffolding burns," Crowley thrashed, snarling. "You think this ends here?" "You're not the narrative," Raina said. "You're evidence." Agents poured into the wash. "Transport both," she ordered. "Isolation, no chatter. Black site intake in 60. As they dragged the broken men away, Salgado exhaled. "Close," he said. "Too close," Raina admitted, ribs screaming behind comm. "They didn't run. They waited." "Means they knew something," Salgado said. Raina nodded. "We intercepted a move, not the plan." Her comm buzzed. Keir again. "Manifest encrypted in the lead truck. Secondary meat listed. Domestic. Houston. 48 hours. Signature reads Vale." Raina's breath caught. "Still in country. Or wants us to think so," Keir said. "And he wants us to come." Raina looked over the blinking aftermath and didn't smile. Victories here were invitations. Later, in the red lit digital forensics lab, the USB from the mobile crate finally cracked. Not cartel crypto, not government standard. Custom, written by someone who understood DEA's bones intimately. Kara watched the scrolling index, face drained, not with shock but recognition. Kier cross checked unlocked files as Salgado and Reyna stood back quiet. These weren't merely chat threads, they were dossiers, decade long records, folders by badge number and last department inside, arrests, transfers, audits, intercepted memos, chain documents matching across 6 precincts. How many? Reyna asked, leaning over Kara's shoulder. 73 so far, Kara said. Kier exhaled slowly. These aren't just dirty actors, they're co-conspirators, each one moved, masked, or reclassified cartel product, and nearly all sat on or near federal task forces, Salgado added, which means clearance for everything. That's not the ugliest layer, Kara said, opening a buried archive. The room cooled. Project Holdfast, she read, sealed, triple-walled, behind an administrative phantom authorizing reactivation. Raina's voice dropped. Hours, Kier frowned. Holdfast, pre-04. Asset reroute protocol that backfired. Kara didn't answer. She opened it fully. Pages unfurled, program briefs, funding ladders, memos between seniors, field guidelines. Holdfast's purpose had been surgical. Leak controlled, tagged product back into distribution to map networks from within. High risk, high reward, deeply classified. It supposedly died after a Florida fiasco put tagged bricks into a civilian crossfire, publicly dismantled, privately mothballed. The logs disagreed. Funding quietly renewed 5 years ago, Kara said, through an anti-crime clause buried in the national enforcement budget, discretionary lines signed at the executive level by your predecessor. Raina's mouth went hard. Compromised. Or naive, Kier said, scanning expenditures. He thought he was reviving controlled leaks with tracers, Kier added. He didn't know it was already hijacked. Salgado swore under breath. Federal money rebuilt the machine, but this time the product wasn't tracked. It was laundered. Intelligence as fig leaf. Kara nodded. They didn't chase cartels, they empowered them. And shielded it with counter-terror clearance, she said. Eyes looked away because the corridor was stamped classified. At the top of the screen, Marcus Vale, original systems architect, later reassigned as systems auditor under the alias Michael Varan, never officially filed, yet present wherever Zeno rewrote or routed records. He didn't just join the network, Raina said. He engineered its engine. Kier's voice thinned. And now he's waiting in Houston. Salgado raised an eyebrow. Why wait? Raina stared at the digital wreckage. Confession by code. Because he thinks we won't pull the pin. Bringing him in exposes everything. He expects hesitation, she continued. He assumes we'll protect the institution over truth. Kara's eyes lifted. What if he's right? Raina didn't blink. Then we burn it ourselves and rebuild properly. She turned to Kier and Salgado. Assemble the strike. Quiet. Full kit. Boots on pavement in 8 hours. No leaks. We find the meat. We cut it off. No more signals, no more ghosts. Vale comes in breathing, Raina said. Kier gave a small nod. And if he fights? Then we finish what he started, Raina answered, ice calm. Weeks later, after Houston's compound crack, Raina stood beneath the Capitol Rotunda's cold light. Right hand raised, cameras stacked, chamber packed. Silence wasn't hesitation. It was gravity. Every seat at oversight taken, faces bipartisan and equally stunned. Transcripts had circulated, files were decrypted, truth crawled out. She lowered her hand, settled at the witness table, leaned toward the mic. Raina Clarke, DEA Director. I'm here not only as a federal officer, she said, but as the woman wrongfully arrested by our own. That arrest exposed more than misconduct. It cracked a network built on opportunism, not creed. This wasn't a lone rogue, it was the natural extension of a failed policy left to rot in quiet. She opened a thick folder, names, programs, budgets bent toward laundering. For 2 hours, she mapped Holdfast's intent, its hijacking, and how federal resources became currency for traffickers hiding in uniforms. She outlined Vale, the system's ghost, reviving Zeno to bypass oversight. Then she closed the file. This wasn't just structural, it was moral. For every sanitized page, a person, she said. For every redaction, a victim. Silence is not neutrality, it's complicity. The chamber stayed still, then applause rose. First wave, then a second. Not politics, human relief. Within a week, sealed indictments moved. Marshals, IA, DOJ auditors swept across 6 states. Some fled, others surrendered without a word. Baton Rouge, a commander caught trying to torch a locker bank. Phoenix, 2 supervisors taken at roll call. The sweeps didn't shout, they executed. Backed by emergency authority, the DEA assumed control of 6 flagged precincts. Command changed. Databases froze. Everyone recertified. Backgrounds rerun. Psych screens redone. Of 70 plus names on Daxon's drive, 34 faced conspiracy counts, 21 cut deals, mapping money and laundering corridors. 12 resigned before charges. 6 died by suicide. Marcus Vale went quietly, arrested in a basement beneath a private storage maze outside Houston. The space wasn't a bunk, it was a command spine, server towers humming, military grade radios aligned with obsessive neatness, 3 passports on the desk: American, Panamanian, Serbian, authentic, used, ready. He didn't reach for the taped pistol, didn't twitch toward the biometric lock, didn't flinch as the stack advanced. He sat like he'd penciled the appointment. When Raina entered, flanked tight, he looked up and smiled faintly. Weight without warmth, punctuation without concession. "You finally arrived," he said, voice dry but precise. "Took your time." She didn't smile back. She held his eyes, let quiet count, then spoke. "You built a machine that ate people," she said even, "and you did it under oath." Vale tilted his head, smile tugging. No denial, no dodge, only cynical certainty. "I built a mirror," he said. "I kept it clear." Raina didn't argue. She picked up the key ring, handed it to her team. "Black transport," she said. "No delay. Federal isolation in an hour." Agents moved. Wrists locked, sweep for transmitters. Vale rose slowly. Movements measured. Restrained, surrounded, he still wore practiced calm, the habit that kept him invisible nearly a decade. As they turned him, he glanced once toward Raina. "The system survives this, Director," he said, voice lowered, but unnervingly sure. Raina met it with steady clarity. "That's the point," she said. "Not your version, the one we repair." He didn't respond. The door's thud sounded nothing like retreat. It sounded like a lid finally settling on a grave. The corridor outside holding glowed with muted lights, reflections stretching across polished floor. Raina walked without hurry, expression composed. No applause waited. Reconstruction, not celebration, followed. In the days ahead, a joint task force of auditors, watchdogs, and federal IT peeled Zeno's roots from the architecture, documented, decrypted, incinerated. Ripping cancer wasn't enough. Something living had to replace it. LEMAR took shape from necessity, a monitoring lattice with no single override, no manual loopholes, no door controlled by one badge. Built by whistleblowers, compliance minds, forensic engineers, it demanded receipts for every action. Nothing moved without a trail. The name wasn't drafted in a boardroom. Raina chose it alone and wrote a line with the request: "Let it be the one thing we never lose again." LEMAR lit nationwide 2 months later. Naomi Keir, appointed to head internal shielding, took the oath without opposition. Mandate broader than discipline, sharper than review. Full autonomy, authority to treat internal violations like external felonies. Keir's first act, a sweeping audit of every fusion task force tied to Holdfast's legacy. Her second, Reopening whistleblower cases stalled or buried. At her swearing in, she spoke briefly. The files in her hands did the rest of the talking. Raina's work didn't end with policy. Weeks later, she visited federal detention. Witness, not spectacle. Hale and Crowley sat in separate units. Movements watched, comms dead. In the interview bay, she stood between two panes and refused them fury. Whatever story you told yourselves, she said steady, it's over. The network that sheltered you has been cut, she continued. Your allies turned, bargained, or vanished into the same void you built. Vale is stripped to bone. Zeno isn't disabled, it's deleted. No backup, no reboot, no key. She didn't raise volume. She let silence weigh. No one's coming. Crowley looked away, emptied out. Hale glared, muscle ticking, voice gone. Power that once moved unnoticed had dissolved in daylight. She left them behind reinforced glass without response to give, without a salvaged lie to hold. At the gate, a quiet buzz rose. A camera caught her exit without commentary. No shouted questions, just a woman leaving a place where truth had been muted for years, carrying only certainty it wouldn't be again. That night, the footage aired on every major network, not as breaking chaos, but as a coda. Months rolled. Sunlight filled the atrium of a rebuilt training center. Modern lines, clean air, rows of recruits at attention. The strength wasn't architecture, it was what the building now meant. Not a museum for outdated rituals, but a space reclaimed and repurposed by lessons paid for with pain. The atmosphere was focused, solemn without pomp, clarity made into habit, not promise. Under a revised seal, accountability, oversight, integrity. Raina stepped to the podium. She faced not only recruits, but the reality of wearing a badge after fire. No notes. She didn't need them. The necessary words lived in what had been dragged into light, and in the quiet resolve to keep it there. I'm not here to welcome you, she began, voice level and unshakable. I'm here to remind you this agency doesn't grant power. It carries responsibility. When you put on the shield, you aren't above the law. You stand beneath its full weight. Her gaze moved, measured, human, making clear silence would indict. Impunity had ended. Reforms were not memos. They were living systems that watched and recorded and insisted. We rebuilt this place, she said steady, not to look new, to be new. The era of buried audits and whispered immunity is finished. From now on, the light doesn't blink. No applause followed. It wasn't needed. The weight sat in the quiet afterward, honest, respectful. A screen behind her woke with images that surpassed speeches. First frame, her niece in class, smiling, sharing a joke, her life moving again beyond the reach of a system that once threatened it, steadied now by truth and vigilance. Then precincts, once tainted, reorganized under new command, each case logged, each step reviewed, each uniform earned. Then those who floated above scrutiny, now cuffed, roles reversed, titles stripped. In the last frame, Naomi Keir hovered over a LEMAR console, activation rippling nationwide, not celebration, function, clean, constant, incorruptible. Raina left the stage without ceremony. Corridors no longer hummed with institutional unease. They felt like muscle, working because they must. Analysts, agents, clerks nodded as she passed. Not reverence, respect. Her office view hadn't changed. The world below had. The desk stayed clear, not empty, ready. She didn't paper walls with awards. The work wasn't a trophy, it was a practice. A soft knock preceded a junior aide placing a sealed file gently on the desk, nodding, leaving. No tension, no rush. The report confirmed the final department under review passed. Full compliance. Reforms weren't installed. They functioned. She read the first lines, closed the folder, and set it down with quiet satisfaction. No anomalies, no red flags, no disappearances. A closed case. Proof the system had stopped shielding predators and started correcting itself, consistently, visibly, as it always owed the public. Outside, the city breathed. under clear sky. For the first time in years, Raina inhaled, without bracing for the next blow. No new ambush hid in shadow. No unseen adversary circled. The machine that once ate its own had been dismantled, and in its place stood something built to be trusted. She looked outward, not for orders, simply acknowledgement. Justice didn't arrive as a trumpet. It arrived as persistence, risk taken, truth repeated, refusal to quiet down. And finally it arrived, not paused, not pending, done. If you found this story worth your time, the narrator's voice would say, softer now, share it, subscribe so the next one doesn't pass you by. In the meantime, that same voice adds, with a hint of warmth earned by hard miles, I picked two more you'll want to hear. The screen would tilt, offering choices. Raina turned from the window, not toward applause or relief, but toward the next task, lighter now, anchored by a repaired center. The building exhaled. Elevators chimed with unremarkable efficiency. Somewhere, recruits drilled policy recitations they actually believed. Somewhere else, a clerk flagged a mislabeled entry without fear. LEMAR hummed invisibly, less sentinel than conscience. Outside, mornings sharpened. Inside, work resumed, ordinary again, which is how accountability should feel when it finally sticks. And though there were names she would never forget, Hale, Crowley, Vale, their power no longer traveled with them. The story had pivoted away from men who stole authority to the people who reclaimed stewardship. That pivot wasn't dramatic, finally. It was practical. It lived in logs, signatures, habits, choices, and light. The badge at her chest caught a slice of sun, not as decoration, but reminder. Tools can be turned, systems can be subverted, but also systems can be rebuilt by hands that refuse shortcuts. Raina reached for the next file. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed, then faded into ordinary traffic. Somewhere closer, laughter drifted from a break room. Kier's voice echoed faintly down a hall, low and steady, solving something without theater. Salgado texted a one-word update, clean. Kara Daxon stepped into a quiet, sunlit office across town and opened a laptop with her name on the door, back on purpose. Time passed without drama, which is its own quiet revolution. Compliance reviews landed like weather forecasts, predictable, useful, unscary. The inbox filled with routine. The calendar preferred meetings that ended early. The worst thing in the building some afternoons was a jammed printer, and even that got logged. That's the ending people rarely film, because it looks like patience. It looks like professionals doing unglamorous tasks well. It looks like systems working the way they were promised to. And for once, it held. Raina allowed herself a small private smile no camera would ever catch, then turned to Paige. If you carried this far alongside her, through fog, cuffs, lies, code, and fire, know this: the story's last note wasn't triumph, it was steadiness, not a drumline, a heartbeat. And in a country that keeps choosing between spectacle and repair, she chose repair. Then she chose it again the next morning, and the next, and the next. The work didn't end. The reasons did. The machine that fed on quiet was silenced by people who refused to be. The door that let everyone in was finally bricked, key melted, hinges counted in an evidence locker that will never again forget what passed through. There will be other stories, other doors, other keys. That's how institutions and people work. But this one finished. That conclusion wasn't guaranteed by a hero's punch. It was earned by 1,000 small, boring, brave decisions. If movies skip that part, that's on movies. The rest of us will remember. Because remembrance is a kind of policy, and policy is a kind of story. And stories, when told in full, repair the places shortcuts hollowed out. Somewhere, a recruit read a case study that didn't end in a shrug. Somewhere, an auditor found nothing and logged that nothing like a promise kept. In a quiet office, Raina signed her name once more, this time on a document that sunsetted 3 more brittle relics embedded in ancient infrastructure. She exhaled, stretched her ribs, still tender from the wash, and let the old ache remind her what shortcuts cost. Then she stood and went to lunch, too. Outside, the sky held, not dramatic, simply clear. She walked without escort because you can when systems don't need to hide behind sirens. A passerby looked up from a phone and didn't recognize her, which is how public service should usually go. Anonymous, competent, paid forward quietly until the next storm. If there is a moral, it isn't that darkness loses, it adapts. So must the light. The difference this time was that the stewards adapted faster, with fewer secrets and better logs. Zeno's ash lay cold. LEMAR merely worked, and the wind over the city smelled like nothing except morning. You made it here, listener, reader, watcher, whichever you are. Thank you for walking the hard miles. If it moved you, share it with someone who might need to hear that repair isn't fiction. Subscribe so the next hard mile finds you ready. And until then, choose the work that makes noise unnecessary. Because one day, you might be the person who notices a wiper's angle, a hood a fraction wrong, a log in the wrong minute, a door unsigned, and you'll choose what to do about it. The plot will bend one way or the other. That bend will be small and absolute and yours. The credits, if there were any, would be plain. Investigators, coders, auditors, clerks, caseworkers, judges, recruits, neighbors, witnesses, nieces, teachers, and people who said no at exactly the right time. Heroes rarely look like posters. Most days they look like paperwork done right and boring meetings that end early. We'll end where it began, a road, a patrol car, a stop. Power sometimes wears uniforms, sometimes it wears silence. This time the counterweight wore patience, and it was heavier. Raina Clarke kept her hands visible, then used them to dismantle a machine. That's not magic. That's a plan with courage. And if there must be an epilogue, let it be brief. Institutional memory can heal. Systems can learn. People can change the shape of old incentives. It takes a while. It takes witnesses. It takes logs that don't blink. And it takes the stubborn faith that sunlight isn't theater, it's maintenance. The doorbell on the cafe still sticks, the awning still fades, but inside, the table where a tired analyst slid a USB now hosts ordinary conversations about milk options. That's victory, not fireworks, footnotes. We wrote them anyway, because someday, someone audits footnotes and finds exactly what they hoped for. Nothing. Nothing missing. Nothing moved. Nothing misnamed. The long, careful zero that proves someone paid attention. If you ever doubt whether that matters, ask someone who lived through a season when the paperwork lied. They'll tell you the truth is heavy. Then they'll ask you to help carry it a while. Take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. You did a hard thing, stayed with a story that refused bright shortcuts. That too is practice. And practice is how we keep doors from becoming gates, credentials from becoming ghosts, and silence from becoming policy. Practice is how we remember what the badge means. And if you don't wear one, you still have a role. Expect receipts. Ask reasonable questions. Cheer for boring successes. Refuse to treat spectacle as truth. It won't trend. It will matter. Somewhere an auditor will sleep better because you read a paragraph this far and decided to keep choosing daylight. Somewhere else a recruit will say, "We don't do it that way anymore," and mean it. Somewhere else again a clerk will push back on an unsigned form and not get punished. These are small, cumulative, civic muscles. The story you just finished is just their warm-up. The work continues quietly, and with that we step out. The building remains, the system hums, the ordinary holds. In a country that sometimes forgets how to do maintenance, we recommit to the unglamorous art. If you found value here, pass it along. If not, that's okay too. Either way, keep your eyes open, steady. Keep your hands visible metaphorically and otherwise. Don't be spooked by the absence of sirens. It often means someone did their job. If they didn't, now there's a lattice that notices. LEMAR doesn't applaud, it logs. That's the point. So the next time a story needs proof, there's proof waiting. And when someone whispers that accountability kills morale, remind them that impunity kills trust. Morale built on impunity is a sugar high. The crash always comes. Build on trust instead. It digests slower. It lasts. And when it needs repair, it's repairable. That's what this was about, beginning to end. Beginning, fog, cuffs, lies. Middle, code, maps, ghosts. End, receipts, reforms, habits. The credits roll over people you'll never meet and would barely notice if you did. That's okay. They notice you. They notice all of us. That noticing is their oath. We pay them with attention and expectation, not applause. One last image. A console blinking green in a precinct that used to look the other way. No drama, just uptime. Somewhere a dispatcher laughs. Somewhere a captain signs a thing correctly. Somewhere a director reviews a clean audit and lets out one breath she didn't know she'd been holding for years. Then she stands and goes to the next meeting, and it ends early. Outside a bus sighs. Inside fluorescent lights buzz like ordinary bees. It's not cinematic, it's the point. If you want fireworks, there are other shows. If you want institutions, this is what they look and sound like. If you want to help, start where you are. Sign things properly, name things honestly, tell the truth cleanly, and keep a paper trail that doesn't blink. The heroes you never see will thank you by never needing to kick down your door. That's not nothing. That's the whole arrangement working. All right, the narrator's voice returns. Two more stories wait, picked for you. Raina's desk lamp clicks off. In the window, the city looks like itself. The badge on the chair back glints once, then dims. The night crew clocks in. The archive spins. The ordinary settles. The credits finally fade. Out in the sleeping city, a siren lifts, then drifts away. Somewhere, and a door locks behind a janitor who will never know he closed on an era. Somewhere else, a teenager studies civics and believes her teacher when he says systems can change. Tomorrow she'll ask better questions than we did. And someday, she'll be the one who looks at a log and says, "This minute is wrong." And that will be enough to tilt a story. We won't know her name. She won't ask us to. She'll file her note, fix the minute, drink her coffee, and make accountability boring again. That's our cue. Thank you for the time and the trust. If this helped you hold a little more weight with a little more steadiness, I'm glad. If it made you suspicious of easy endings, better still, the next chapter is already being written where the receipts live. See you there. Until then, stay curious, stay kind, and keep your hands where everybody can see them. Systems learn from what we tolerate. They also learn from what we celebrate. Let's celebrate ordinary integrity until it's fashionable again. The light is on a timer now. It won't go out when nobody's watching. That was the point all along. This has been a long one. If it mattered, pass it on. If you hated it, pass along something better. There's room. We can want more than spectacle. We can want function, and we can get it slowly, stubbornly together. That's the ending. That's the invitation. Have a good day. Lesson: accountability is everyday work, not a headline. If you've lived long enough to remember black and white newscasts and church basement petitions, you know this. Real safety isn't the siren, it's the follow through. On a foggy 2-lane in Georgia, power hid behind a uniform and a lie. Cuffs bit. A baggie appeared. But Raina Clarke, a steady woman in a charcoal hoodie, answered not with a shout, but with receipts, names, times, logs that wouldn't blink. What unraveled next wasn't just two bad actors. It was a rigged machine. Many of us have seen versions of that machine over the miles. Forms unsigned, footage lost, stories that don't square with what our eyes saw. The fix wasn't flashy, it was careful. Every bag counted, every edit traced, every door signed. They tore out the old shortcut and built LEMAR, a porch light that stays on whether anyone's watching or not. For those of us 65 and better, that feels familiar. It's how families, towns, and honest outfits endure, not by spectacle, but by patient maintenance. That's the lesson. Keep the light steady, and the road stays safer for everyone. Friends, I'd love your take. After Raina's story, what does accountability that lasts look like to you? Monthly public reports, cameras that can't be switched off, or something simpler, like a clerk empowered to say, "This minute is wrong"? Have you witnessed a moment when quiet diligence, paperwork done right, made a bigger difference than a loud promise? Share your experience below so others can learn from it. If this resonated, please hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your engagement helps more neighbors find practical hope and keeps these calm, necessary conversations going.